City traders' rate-rigging convictions quashed after 10-year legal battle. In a remarkable turn of events, two former City traders have successfully overturned their convictions related to one of the most notorious scandals of the financial crisis, marking the end of a decade-long struggle for justice. Tom Hayes and Carlo Palombo, who were previously imprisoned for their roles in manipulating interest rates that govern bank loans, have had their names cleared. These traders were part of a larger group of 19 individuals found guilty in both the United States and the United Kingdom for their involvement in the manipulation of the Libor and Euribor rates, key benchmarks that influence borrowing costs for various loans, including mortgages and auto financing. After the Supreme Court's ruling on Wednesday, Mr. Hayes expressed that the conviction had destroyed his family life, describing the moment of being exonerated as surreal. This ruling is seen as a significant validation for the traders, who have maintained for the past 10 years that they were victims of a flawed justice system. They contended that their prosecutions were unjust, arguing that their actions were standard business practices, and that they were unfairly targeted to quell public outrage against banks during the financial crisis. The Supreme Court's decision to overturn their convictions came after a prolonged battle to restore their reputations. Mr. Hayes remarked outside the court that this decision was long overdue, especially after enduring a cruel and pernicious sentence that kept him behind bars for 5.5 years. He lamented the personal toll it took, stating, "It destroyed my family. One missed most of my son's childhood," and noted that it contributed to the dissolution of his marriage. "For so long I've been an international fugitive, and now I can move on with my life. Or at least try to," he added. When asked about potential compensation, he indicated that he would seek further legal counsel, emphasizing that no amount of money could replace the lost time or alleviate the emotional scars from his experience. Mr. Palombo described the entire ordeal as a crazy experience, expressing a mix of relief and happiness at the outcome. The Serious Fraud Office, which initially prosecuted the traders, announced that it would not pursue a retrial. Both Hayes and Palombo were part of a group of traders and brokers who faced charges for interest rate manipulation in a series of 9 criminal trials held in London and New York from 2015 to 2019. Mr. Hayes, who worked for Swiss bank UBS, was the first banker to be imprisoned in connection with this scandal in 2015. His original sentence of 15 years was later reduced to 11 years on appeal, and he was released in January 2021. Mr. Palombo received a 4-year sentence in 2019 and was also released in 2021. #Understanding Libor. Libor, or the London Interbank Offered Rate, is a crucial interest rate that determines borrowing costs for trillions of dollars in financial transactions. Following the 2008 financial crisis, it became embroiled in allegations of misconduct. Numerous City traders were accused of attempting to manipulate Libor rates to benefit the banks they represented. The Libor rate was phased out after 2021. The scandal first emerged in 2012 when it was revealed that banks were artificially inflating rates to gain from trading while simultaneously lowering them to hide their financial difficulties during the global crisis. The financial turmoil that began in 2008 led to the collapse of Lehman Brothers, causing widespread economic instability and recessions in various countries. Investigations by the BBC uncovered evidence suggesting a broader, state-sponsored manipulation of interest rates, driven by pressures from central banks and governments during the crisis. Notably, evidence implicating high-level officials, including those from Downing Street and the Bank of England, was reportedly suppressed during the trials. In 2022, U.S. courts determined that there was no evidence that traders had violated any laws, leading to the quashing of all American convictions, leaving the UK as the only nation where these actions were criminalized. In the UK, attempts to bring the traders' cases before the Supreme Court were blocked 5 times by the Court of Appeal between 2015 and 2019. Lord Leggett, one of the justices reviewing the case, stated that errors in jury instructions during the trials rendered the convictions unsafe and thus invalid. He noted that these misdirections compromised the fairness of the trials. However, the court also acknowledged that there was sufficient evidence for a jury to reasonably conclude that Hayes had conspired with others to manipulate the submissions used to calculate the Libor rate. Hashtag a call for change. In light of the Supreme Court's ruling, conservative MP Sir David Davis argued that the judicial system requires significant reform, labeling the prosecutions as a scapegoating exercise resulting from collusion between banks and government entities. The Serious Fraud Office recognized the judgment and stated that pursuing a retrial would not serve the public interest. Mr. Hayes' solicitor, Karen Todner, has called for a comprehensive public inquiry into the convictions and for reforms within the justice system. She emphasized the profound personal losses Mr. Hayes has endured, stating, "Tom has missed out on formative years with his son, time with his family, and the loss of his career and his home, time he will never get back." She concluded, "There are no winners here." With the Supreme Court's exoneration of Mr. Hayes and Mr. Palombo, other traders who were convicted for similar charges may now seek to have their convictions overturned. Elizabeth Robertson, a lawyer for one of the other convicted traders until 2016, suggested that the ruling could also impact those who had pleaded guilty, stating, "I think the judgment says enough for those that pleaded guilty to have their convictions quashed as well." This case raises important questions about the integrity of the financial system and the justice process. What are your thoughts on the implications of this ruling? Do you believe the justice system adequately addressed the complexities of the financial crisis? Share your opinions in the comments below. Vindication for two bankers. Questions raised about Britain's legal system. Justice redefined. When banking careers become criminal convictions. Imagine being sentenced to the same maximum prison term as a blackmail offender, not for extortion, but for your profession. This was the harsh reality for two bankers, Tom Hayes and Carlo Palombo, who found themselves at the center of a maelstrom in Britain's legal system. The Libor and Euribor scandals. A brief recap. In 2015, Tom Hayes, a former UBS and Citigroup banker, was convicted of conspiring to manipulate Libor, London interbank offered rate, a pivotal benchmark interest rate. His initial sentence? A staggering 14 years in prison, mirroring the maximum penalty for blackmail. 4 years later, in 2019, Carlo Palombo, once of Barclays, received a 4-year sentence for tampering with Euribor, another critical benchmark. Both men walked free in 2021, but the questions linger. But here's where it gets controversial. Were these bankers truly guilty of criminal offenses, or were they scapegoats for a flawed financial system? The severity of their sentences, especially in Hayes' case, raises eyebrows and prompts a deeper examination of Britain's legal approach to financial misconduct. The bigger picture, understanding benchmark manipulation. To grasp the implications, let's break down what Libor and Euribor mean to the global economy. These benchmarks influence interest rates for trillions of dollars in loans and financial transactions worldwide. Manipulating them can have far-reaching, detrimental effects on the economy. However, the line between negligence, corporate culture, and malicious intent can be blurry. And this is the part most people miss. The release of Hayes and Palombo in 2021 might signal a shift in how the legal system views such cases, or perhaps it highlights the inefficiencies in the sentencing process. Either way, it underscores the need for a more nuanced discussion about personal versus corporate culpability in the banking sector. Questions for Britain's legal system. Should the legal system prioritize punitive measures or focus on reforming the financial sector's regulatory environment? Are bankers being held to an unfairly high standard, or is this a necessary deterrent against corruption? How can we better distinguish between systemic failures and individual malfeasance in complex financial cases? We want to hear from you. Do you believe the sentences were justified, or were these bankers unfairly penalized? Should the focus be on individual accountability or systemic overhaul? Share your thoughts in the comments below.